Why do you always notice the mood in the room before anyone says a word? Why do you understand what people are feeling even when they can't explain it themselves? Why do you find yourself calming situations you didn't create, carrying emotions that aren't yours, and holding back your own reactions so others can feel comfortable? And why, if emotional intelligence is supposed to be such a valuable skill, does it so often feel heavy, lonely, and exhausting? There's one burning question we're going to answer at the very end of this video, and it's a question emotionally intelligent people secretly struggle with. If emotional intelligence is such a strength, why does it so often feel like a burden instead of a gift? Stay with me until the end, because the answer may completely change how you relate to yourself and to others. And if content like this resonates with you, subscribe to this channel for more deep explorations into human emotions, psychology, mental patterns, and healing. Now let's talk about why it truly sucks to be emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is often praised as the ability to understand emotions, manage them effectively, and navigate relationships with empathy and awareness. On paper, it sounds ideal. In real life, it's far more complicated. Emotionally intelligent people don't just feel their own emotions. They feel the emotional climate around them. Their nervous system is constantly attuned to subtle cues, tone shifts, micro-expressions, changes in energy, silence that carries meaning. This isn't something you turn on and off. It's automatic. Psychologically, emotional intelligence involves heightened activity in areas of the brain responsible for emotional processing, empathy, and social cognition. This means your brain is continuously integrating emotional data, even when you'd rather not. While others may move through interactions unaware, you're processing layers beneath the surface. And that's where the first struggle begins. Being emotionally intelligent often means you see what others don't want to see. You notice avoidance, passive aggression, unresolved pain, emotional immaturity. You sense when someone is projecting, when they're lying to themselves, when they're not ready to face their own emotions. But insight doesn't equal control. You can understand someone deeply and still be affected by their behavior. You can empathize and still feel hurt. And you can see the root of a problem while still being caught in it. One of the most exhausting aspects of emotional intelligence is emotional labor. Emotionally intelligent people often become the emotional regulators in relationships, families, workplaces, and friendships. You're the one who listens, the one who mediates, the one who explains emotions in a way others can understand, the one who keeps things from escalating. And over time, this role becomes expected. People assume you can handle it because you always have. They assume you're strong because you're calm. They assume you're fine because you're self-aware. But self-awareness doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It just means you understand it. This creates a silent imbalance. You give emotional understanding, patience, and space, but rarely receive the same depth in return. And when you do express your needs, they're often misunderstood. You're told you're overanalyzing, too sensitive, or making things deeper than they need to be. That's one of the cruel paradoxes of emotional intelligence. The more aware you are, the more isolated you can feel. Another reason it sucks to be emotionally intelligent is because you're often aware of problems long before anyone else acknowledges them. You sense relationship issues early. You notice emotional distance forming. You feel tension before it becomes conflict. But when you try to address it, others may not be ready. They may deny it, dismiss it, or avoid the conversation entirely. So you're left carrying the knowledge alone, waiting for others to catch up emotionally. This waiting can be painful. It creates a sense of helplessness. You know what's happening, but you can't force awareness onto someone else. And knowing without being able to act is one of the most frustrating psychological states to be in. Emotionally intelligent people also tend to internalize responsibility. Because you understand emotions well, You may feel responsible for maintaining harmony. You might ask yourself how you could have communicated better, been more patient, reacted differently, even when someone else's behavior wasn't yours to manage. This self-reflection can be healthy, but it can also turn into self-blame. Research shows that highly empathetic individuals are more prone to emotional burnout. Constantly processing emotional information, regulating responses, and prioritizing understanding over expression drains mental and emotional energy. Without boundaries, emotional intelligence becomes emotional exhaustion. Another painful reality is that emotional intelligence doesn't guarantee emotional safety. You can communicate clearly, validate others, express yourself calmly, and still be misunderstood. You can show up with honesty and care and still be met with defensiveness or withdrawal. This is because emotional intelligence requires mutual participation. It only works when others are willing to engage at the same depth. When they're not, your awareness becomes one-sided. Emotionally intelligent people often find themselves in relationships with emotionally unavailable or less self-aware individuals, not because they seek dysfunction, but because their empathy bridges gaps others don't know how to cross. Unfortunately, bridges are meant to be crossed both ways, not lived on. There's also grief that comes with emotional intelligence. Grief for conversations you wish you could have. Grief for emotional depth you crave but don't receive. Grief for the version of people you see potential in, even when they're not ready to become it. You don't just experience loss when something ends. You experience loss when something never fully begins. Emotionally intelligent people are also deeply aware of themselves. They notice their own patterns, triggers, and flaws. This level of self-awareness can be empowering, but it can also be heavy. You can't hide from yourself. You can't escape uncomfortable truths. You see where you need to grow, and that awareness doesn't always come with immediate relief. Ignorance may not be bliss, but awareness without support can feel like a burden. Now let's address something important. Emotional intelligence is often developed, not innate. Many emotionally intelligent people learn to read emotions early in life because they had to. Maybe they grew up in environments where moods were unpredictable, communication was indirect, or emotional safety wasn't guaranteed. Their nervous system adapted by becoming observant, intuitive, and attuned. This means emotional intelligence can be rooted in survival. You learn to understand others to stay safe, to avoid conflict, to maintain connection. And while this skill helped you navigate difficult environments, it doesn't mean you should continue carrying that role everywhere. Now let's return to the burning question. If emotional intelligence is such a strength, why does it so often feel like a burden instead of a gift? Here's the answer. Emotional intelligence only feels like a burden when it's used to overextend, overaccommodate, and self-abandon. It becomes painful when your understanding replaces your boundaries, when your empathy silences your needs, when your awareness keeps you in situations that don't nourish you. Emotional intelligence becomes a gift when it includes discernment, the ability to recognize not just what others feel, but what you deserve. When you stop using your insight to justify mistreatment and start using it to choose healthier connections. You were never meant to carry everyone's emotions. You were never meant to be the emotional translator for those unwilling to learn the language. And you were never meant to sacrifice yourself for the sake of harmony. True emotional intelligence includes knowing when to step back, when to say no, and when to let others face the consequences of their emotional limitations. When you honor your own emotional needs with the same care you give others, emotional intelligence stops sucking and starts feeling like the powerful, grounding force it was always meant to be. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to this channel for more deep psychological insights into emotions, relationships, attachment, and healing. Your emotional intelligence isn't a curse. It's a strength that simply needs direction, balance, and self-respect.